Good afternoon, Paul Hawksbee and Charlie Baker here on talkSPORT. We're reacting to the news that Gareth Southgate decided this morning that he would officially step down from the England manager's role.
I think that's a wise move by him.
Lovely statement from him. We did wonder whether we'd see a press conference, a kind of goodbye press conference, one last chat with the press. It doesn't look like that is going to happen, which kind of feeds into our next conversation and the process from now on. Former Managing Director of the FA, Adrian Bevington joins us. Hi, Adrian.
How are we, chaps?
Yeah, I was really maybe there's start there. I just kind of expected. I don't know why we saw that slightly eggy exit interview back in the day with Roy Hodgson, where he said he didn't quite know why he was there. But were you?
Thankfully, I wasn't at that one.
No, that's right. You'd gone by then. But did you expect Gareth maybe would have done one last press conference to sign off, or do you think we're going to hear anything from him, or you think that's it, the statement, and that's it?
I honestly don't know, but I get it looks like the statement is quite a long, lengthy statement, and the FA have issued statements as well from Mark Bullingham, the chief executive. So, in effect, that may well be what we will get at this particular moment. I also kind of sense as well that maybe back in the day, shall we say, there was more of a clamour that you had to do the exit press conference, whether it be with the likes of McLaren or Ericsson. That type of Capello press conference. I think Gareth has spoken quite extensively. I think that's one of the things that we'd say he's been fantastic at doing during his tenure as England manager. So maybe he'll have a breather, but I'm sure it won't be the last we hear from him.
Also, these days, there's a lot more ways of owning your own image and owning yourself. You might do a podcast about it. You might do it on Instagram. He might want to own the moment himself rather than the FA owning it.
It kind of depends what happens next from his point of view. I suppose from the FA's point of view, this won't come as a shock. I mean, we were saying earlier on, we all kind of sensed that win or lose, this was going to be Gareth's last tournament. So they would have been doing some groundwork. You've been in that situation where you're potentially expecting this can happen. So how far down the road will they be? How imminent would an appointment be, you think, Adrian?
Well, I think they obviously will have been doing their homework. John McDermott, who's someone I'm sure you guys are aware of, technical director at the FA, is a really experienced operator in football. Did a very good job at Tottenham Hotspur. Prior to that, was with the FA. I'm sure he'll be doing his work ahead of the tournament because, as you've just said there, that I don't think it's a massive surprise that Gareth has gone at the end of this tournament. How long it will take, I don't think they're under massive pressure. Yes, they've got the games in September. I'm sure they'll want, ideally, to have the person in place by then. But they have got a bit of a window to get whatever conversations they need to have done in the short term to try and land something and get the person they want for September. But I guess it depends if that person's in work or not. We all talk about the different candidates. Some are in work, some are not, and that will determine the timeline, I guess.
We're hearing today that Eddie Howe would consider an offer from the FA. I just wonder whether unofficially they would maybe have a chat with Eddie or Eddie's people and say, look, would you welcome this or not? Because it's never a good look, really, if you approach somebody and they put out a press conference saying, I was approached by the FA, but I said no. They don't want too many of those custard pies, do they, ideally?
It's a very difficult one when you're in the FA's position, though, Paul, because having been there myself, and you've got the regulations which are pretty tight in place with regards to sounding people out. Which the reality is, you do really need to sound people out. That's the truth of the matter. But I think anyone who's got, if it was to be Eddie Howe we're talking about, I think Newcastle United Football Club would welcome an informal conversation with them first before they found that the FA, as the governing body, was speaking to their manager. Now, maybe I'm being naive there, but I think it's a fine balancing act for the FA to conduct this process for them. John McDermott will know Eddie Howe pretty well through the whole coaching circuit. I'm sure they could have an informal conversation, but it might be that there's a grown-up set of circumstances now where they can have a conversation with someone at Newcastle like Darren Eales, if this is the route they wanted to go, and say, look, we'd like to have a chat with Eddie. What's the feeling?
Will they have an idea of who they want, Adrian? Do they make up a list prior to the manager even going to the tournament or whatever? Will they be scrabbling around for names? That's the image I have, unfortunately, in my head.
No, I don't think that would be the case, Charlie. I think they'll have a list in place.
Yeah.
I'd be absolutely stunned, and I've been in that side of the table, both in club jobs and with national team jobs, and you should always have, a list of candidates that you would think could be suitable at a particular time. I think the big question that we don't know the hard answer to at the moment, more importantly than just the names, is the profile of the person. Are they going to go for someone who is kind of down the Gareth Southgate route, who's a homegrown coach, who is going to be someone who's wedded to coach education, developing players, part of the whole England DNA that's been built over the past decade and more, development teams, which Gareth, was very, very passionate about bringing players through? Or, we talk about people best in practice, best in class. That might be a super foreign coach who may just come in and only care about the first team. Why would they particularly care about the under 16 team? That's what we've got to find first. What's the profile they're looking for? And that will really determine the shortlist that they put together or have put together.
I mean, with the St George's pathway, there's been a lot of talk about that. They made a big commitment and investment in St George's Park, and talking about succession plans, which would mean Lee Carsley effectively being the next cab off the rank, who's done very well with the under-21s and won a tournament last year. Charlie painted an interesting scenario. Gareth had that 4-game audition, if you like, after Sam Allardyce went. And so by the time he got the gig, people were quite happy because they'd seen his teams and they'd kind of bedded Gareth in, because there was some scepticism before he got the job. So they could do the same thing with Lee Carsley, effectively. They could give him the Nations League. There's no World Cup qualifiers until next March. And so if he does well, then there wouldn't be maybe the level of pushback there might be otherwise if he got the job full-time, Adrian.
Well, it's a very fair point. The counter to that might be, if it was Lee Carsley might not want to go through that process, because he's doing a very, very good job with the under-21s. He's been linked with one or two other jobs. He's linked heavily with the Ireland national team job. If he goes and does an interim role, it's not quite as easy to roll back into another position if that doesn't work and you don't land the job full-time. I'm sure that Lee Carsley is someone that they, have on that shortlist. Whether they believe Lee Carsley is ready at this moment, he has done a very, very good job with the 21s. But it's a big, big difference between the 21s and the senior team job. And I think the other part of the profile that we've got to talk about here, that, it's a reality whether we like it or not. We want to see a coach who's going to come in and build on the fantastic work that Gareth Southgate has done and take the England team to the next level and hopefully win a trophy and certainly be deep in tournaments. That's the benchmark now. But you've also you've also got to look at what Gareth Southgate has done off the pitch. And while obviously the football role is the most important role, I'm not getting away from that. But there is the responsibilities as the England manager or England head coach that you have to be very good at all of the other skills that go with it. Yes, dealing with the media, but also lots of ambassadorial stuff, the stuff that Gareth Southgate's dealt with over the past 8 years. He's been, a politician. He's dealt with COVID. He's dealt with redundancies at the FA. He's been their main spokesperson for an 8-year period. Now, some people who are managers and very good coaches just aren't equipped to do that. So whoever they go for has to be able to do it. Otherwise, there's a high risk they could fall down very quickly.
Do you think the FA will be under pressure to appoint an English coach, Adrian?
Yes, I think they will be under pressure. May not be the right word, but I think there will be an expectation from certain stakeholder groups in football that we will go for an English coach. And the reason being that there's been such an investment into St George's Park through the coach education programme that it's kind of a bit of a kick in the face if they don't go for an English coach when there's so much work going in there. Now, we've got some really exciting young coaches emerging who are maybe not ready at this particular moment, who are working in the Championship or League One and the Premier League. The pool is not massive for them at this moment. So if they do go outside of an English coach or a homegrown coach, I think the next stage is, will they be looking at a foreigner or a foreign coach who's already worked in England, which for me would be about as far as I would be looking for them to go.
And would the expectation be they make a quick permanent appointment? Do you think they would want somebody in for that Republic of Ireland game in September?
Ideally, yes. I think they'll be smart enough, and I think they've handled it quite well so far, to their credit. They don't want to lock themselves in unnecessarily. Why would they do that? But in an ideal world behind the scenes, they'd like to have that person, I'm sure.
And finally, who would you go for,
who is it?
Adrian? Who would be your...
Kieran McKenna?
You've got a bit of distance on it now. Who would you be? Michael Carrick's name has come up a lot, which you'll be saying...
No,
you'll
we
be
don't
saying
want Michael Carrick taking it. No, we don't want Michael Carrick taking it. He's not quite ready yet. No, thankfully, from my point of view, I've got no responsibility on this one. And you know what? I think it's until you've been in the chair where you actually are part of appointing a coach, we can all have 1,000,001 opinions, but it's a different type of responsibility to make that decision. And whether it's John McDermott with Debbie Hewitt, with Mark Bullingham, whoever it may be at the FA, I think we've just got to let them breathe a little bit and try and come to the right decision. There are different profiles they can go for, and they've got to decide on what's right and fits for them. But I'll leave that to them.
I can't hear a name, Adrian. I can't hear a name.
That was definitely passing on that one.
I heard that,
Ever the politician. Cheers, Adrian. All the best. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, guys.
Appreciate your insight. Adrian Bevington, their former managing director of the FA, and as you probably gathered, Borough fan as well.
Paul Hawksby and Andy Jacobs, Monday to Friday afternoons 1 till 4 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.